Barrett, there is a ton to talk about here in T-Town. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, Ryan. I would imagine you have plenty of hashtag content for today's show.
There is no doubt. Now, but the ones that are really getting me is the ones that tell me that they never doubted Alabama going into the fourth quarter. I don't believe them. I'm calling them out on it.
Yeah, we call those people liars because Mississippi State had outplayed Alabama up to that point. So, having confidence in your team is great. I get that, but anybody who objectively watched that game knows Mississippi State significantly outplayed Alabama the majority of that game. Not to say Alabama didn't deserve to win. They absolutely did deserve to win, but Mississippi State also deserved to win. I mean, that came down to basically two calls. It came down to Dan Mullen's decision to punt rather than go for it, and it came down to Alabama's decision by Brian Daboll to call a perfectly timed slant that Jalen Hurts executed to perfection to Calvin Ridley to set up the game-winning score. Those two plays swayed the game. Either one of those plays doesn't happen, I think Mississippi State wins the ballgame.
Barrett, let me go back here just for a couple of minutes. When you look at Mississippi State and you look at Dan Mullen, why were they so effective against Alabama? Was it just a perfect game plan? I mean, did Nick Saban get out-coached for four quarters?
Well, yeah, he definitely got out-coached for 3 of the 4 quarters. I think also Mississippi State basically came in with the mindset of flat-out run right at you and force you to stop us because Alabama could stop them. And quite honestly, Alabama couldn't stop them. That's why they didn't hold the ball in the first half at all. So, it was a great game plan by Mississippi State. It was a great execution by Nick Fitzgerald and Arius Williams, and they exposed Alabama for their deficiencies from a defensive standpoint, or at least what developed as deficiencies throughout the course of the season. And then conversely, you saw Todd Grantham absolutely heat up Jalen Hurts consistently. I think he saw the same tape that we saw against LSU. We saw an Alabama offensive line that struggled against LSU. And Mississippi State brought pressure and got times, and then, had a ton of pressure on them in other spots as well. Ultimately, that cost them the game because, Brian Daboll called a fantastic play to set up the game-winning touchdown. But it was, Alabama's got some problems. And they're problems that right now, they're due to injury, which you can't fix, and they're coming at the worst time because what happens against Auburn and potentially Georgia if you can't block? You're going to get a lot of more of the same and probably even more heat. So Alabama fans, if they're concerned, they have every reason to be. And if they're not, then they're fooling themselves because there are real concerns in Tuscaloosa right now.
Let me go to the Auburn-Georgia game. What was your big takeaway from that moment down in Lee County?
Well, that Gus Malzahn coached to win. He didn't coach to not to lose. He coached to win. And I think that's the biggest difference. Gus Malzahn 3 weeks ago, would not have called a reverse on third down to Eli Stove on 3rd and 3 in the early parts of a fourth quarter game that was, at the time, 30-10. He would have called Kerryon Johnson up the middle. But he called Eli Stove on a reverse. That's different. He would not have called the screen pass to Kerryon Johnson up 33-10 to put the game away. But he called it against Georgia. He called a game to win. And that is a huge change for a team that no one ever doubted their talent. So that was the biggest thing. On top of that, the defense really, I think, exposed Georgia's offensive line when they felt like they had an opening. They just kept coming after Jake Fromm. And then I think on the offensive side, they understood and realized early on Georgia's defense was on its heels, and Gus Malzahn kept attacking. And if you heard his post-game press conference, the post-game comments, both on ESPN, CBS, and then in the press room, you saw a guy that I think not only is confident in his team, I think we all know that, but maybe took some of the things that were said about him, and I said some of them. I don't know if it was specifically towards me. I doubt it was, but took some of those things to heart, and that's pretty terrifying because right now, based on what we've seen, is Auburn playing the best football in the SEC? I think the answer right now is yes.
So, Barrett, how will this Auburn team deal with all the outside noise? Because for 2 weeks, I think everybody is going to say very similar to what you're saying about Auburn right now. How are they going to deal with that, and do you think they'll handle that fine?
Well, that's the big issue, is because they haven't dealt with that well at times. But to me, it does feel different. It does feel like they're out there having fun. They're confident with what they're doing, but they don't seem to have an arrogance about it. They don't seem to have a mindset of we're just going to go out there and roll a football out there and win. We're going to go take it, and I think that's different than maybe in years past, especially 2015, and that's probably a result of them getting embarrassed in games they should have won already this year, Clemson and LSU. So I think those two things are helping them sort of stay grounded and helping them understand that, you don't go out there and win because you've got a white helmet with an AU on it. Just similarly, you don't go, dominate Mississippi State because you're wearing crimson and white. You've got to go earn it. And I think the lessons that they learned in those two losses, I think is really what's helping them stay grounded through this, because, they are going to hear a lot of this the next couple of weeks. And I think the line for Auburn, Alabama, the early line, which I don't even think you can actually bet, was something like 10.5 in favor of the Tide. In like an hour.
Wow.
So they're going to hear a lot of it.
Barrett, let me go back here just for a couple of minutes. Can you see a scenario where the SEC can get two teams in college football playoffs?
The only scenario I think it would have to happen is if Auburn beats Alabama in a really close, really hard-fought game in which it's as clear as day that both of those two teams are two of the best teams in the country. Auburn then beats Georgia. Right, so Auburn would be in at that point, and the way Alabama would get in at that point it's not as easy as just one domino falling. I think there has to be a couple of dominoes that fall for that to happen. You need Michigan to beat Wisconsin, and then Wisconsin to lose the Big Ten championship game. You need TCU to upset Oklahoma, but maybe lose along the way somewhere else. Alabama is the team that can be that second team. I think that's the only option for the SEC at this point is Alabama being that second team. And it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, they're one of the four best teams. We all saw it. They need some conference championship games to end in upset, or some upsets to happen to eventual conference champions over the next couple of weeks, which is not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I think you really only need a couple of things happening, which we've all seen wackiness in football before. But the only team that really has that chance, I think, is Alabama, and that would be if they lose a classic of an Iron Bowl close, in which it's pretty obvious that the two of the four best teams in the country were playing on that field.
We're talking to Barrett, Sallee, CBS Sports national college football analyst. Barrett, if I ask you your top four, maybe even your top five, maybe that one team on the outside looking in, how would you rank them right now in college football?
Right now, I'd have Miami 1, Alabama 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4, Auburn 5, Wisconsin 6. And the reason I'd have Miami 1 is, look at their signature wins. They throttled Notre Dame. They handled Virginia Tech. Those are two better wins than Alabama's got. And talent-wise, Alabama's better. There's no doubt about it. But what's their signature win? Mississippi State? We all saw how that game went. And so it's not really disrespecting to say, hey, look, right now, because of what we've seen, Miami, I think, is getting hot at the right time, has two better wins, and doesn't have a lot of the issues that Alabama's doing. In fact, they've overcome a lot of issues and proven that they can overcome a lot of these issues at an extremely high level, specifically the loss of Mark Walton in the middle of the year.
Hey, Barrett, which way did does Knoxville go? We're talking about Tennessee head coaching vacancy. What do you see happening there? Are you believing some of this Gruden talk?
I believe they're going to ask him. At this point, there's no doubt they're going to ask him. He'll probably say no and go coach the NFL or go work in TV, either at ESPN or somewhere else. But they're going to ask him, and he'll say no, and then they'll move on. If I had to bet on who's going to be the guy, I think it's going to be Dan Mullen. I don't think he's going to get the Florida job. I think there are a lot of different reasons on both sides that may not work out. And Tennessee will realize this dude can coach, he can evaluate talent, and he can coach players up. Well, what does Tennessee need? A guy who can coach players up, a guy who can coordinate a good offense, and a guy who can recognize talent. So he's a perfect fit. I think he'd do a great job on Rocky Top. I think he'd be the guy.
Hey, Barrett, I know I'm going to put your feet on the fire, and I know it's November the 13th, but if it's okay, we're going to skip La Monroe and Mercer. If it's okay, we're just going to talk about the Iron Bowl.
Nick Saban's going to be mad at you if you do that.
Nick
Saban's going to be super mad at you.
Well, okay.
That's rat poison.
All right, so what do you think about – no, I'm going to ask you. What do you think about the Mercer Bears? You're a lot closer to that program than I am. Forget about it, man. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the big game, the epic Iron Bowl that's brewing up. If I put you on the spot on a Monday, where would you go? Would you go Auburn? Would you go Alabama in this pick?
I picked Auburn to win that game preseason and then lose the SEC championship game to Georgia. Right now, I still think Auburn beats Alabama. Right now, I think Auburn. Right now, you look at what Alabama's issues are: offensive line, defensive depth. That plays into exactly where Auburn is excelling right now. Their defensive front is awesome, and their offensive line is fantastic. So right now, I would lean Auburn at this point.
But Bear, to follow that up, I mean, and I think a lot of people could make that same argument as well. But I don't know if this Georgia team, I think what Auburn did on Saturday to Georgia will happen in Atlanta if they make it there. I'm not buying this Georgia team.
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't see how you can fix that if Georgia in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
If that's the matchup, I don't see how you can fix that blocking problem because their offensive line has been great all year, but Auburn made them look foolish. I mean, Auburn made them look awful, and I don't know if you can fix that in 3 weeks. So I'm kind of with you in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching the game, and see, I ticked off all the folks in Tuscaloosa because Thursday and Friday I told them that Auburn was going to beat Georgia by a decent margin. I did not have it this big of a margin, but people were very upset because listen, your eyes don't lie to you. Auburn was going to, and the same problems that I have against Alabama and Auburn is the same questions that I had Saturday. That front seven in Auburn is a championship front seven, and it will be very hard for a offensive line that has struggled in Tuscaloosa to handle that front.
I agree. I mean, if you're struggling along the offensive line, the way Auburn's playing, as long as there's no injuries, it's almost. I mean, Clemson didn't stop them. LSU didn't stop them. Like that. That's the one constant, and it has not changed all year long. Like even in the losses, that's been their MO. So, I think they'll win the Iron Bowl if I had to pick right now. And looking at the way things are going, I don't know how Georgia fixes that issue in 3 weeks.